Hello guys and welcome back to my channel Interview with Bunny, and we are back with another video on our system designing fundamental playlist, and in this video we will be discussing about the choice of the database. So in our last video we have seen in detail that what is our data, means how we can classify the data, and we can classify our data into three categories, that is the structured data, the semi-structured data and the unstructured data. And we have also seen that based on the classification of the data, the choice of the database also differ accordingly. Means if we are going with the structured data, we go with the relational database like Postgres or MySQL. But in case we are going with a semi-structured database, at that time we have multiple options, because a semi-structured data can be of many types, and based on the type of the semi-structured data, we save it accordingly. And we have seen in detail in our last video that what is a document store, what is a key value store, what is a white column store, what is a graph database, and what is a time series database. And along with that, we have also seen that what is an unstructured data and what is the way of saving an unstructured data. But in this video, we will see how we choose the data, because here if you look carefully, within a particular category of the database, there are multiple variations of the database that are available. So based on the requirement or based on some aspect, during our system designing interview, we have to convince our interviewer that actually which type of database or which category of the database fits our actual requirement. So in this video, we will see in detail about the choice of the database. I hope that is clear. So the first and the foremost thing, if you have seen my earlier videos on system designing, where I have designed a large scale end-to-end system such as ticket booking application, e-commerce and so on. So I have already 21 videos on the end-to-end system designing. So here if you look carefully on each and every video, there we have mentioned the type of database we are selecting for a particular design. For example, here we are going with a Postgres solution, here we are going with a S3 database and so on. So for each and every video that you will be opening over here, I have mentioned in detail that what will be the structure of the database, what are the relationship and attribute of the data, and based on that what will be the correct database that you should choose. But if you look carefully, in most of my videos, there is one common question for everyone. That is, there is a confusion that why we have not choose database X rather than why we have choose the database Y. So for example, in some video, someone is telling that why we have used a MySQL database rather than using a Cassandra, or someone is telling that why we have used a Postgres database rather than using a MySQL database. So I have seen in most of the videos, there is a confusion that happens with the viewers or with the candidates about the exact data type or the exact database that we have to choose during our interview or while solving a particular problem. And in this video, I will solve all your doubts. So the first and the foremost thing that I want to tell you, that during your technical interview, though the choice of the database matters a lot, but it is not that much crucial that instead of saying MySQL, if you just go to the Postgres database, you will not able to clear the interview. It is not like that. But if you fail to identify this simple thing, that whether you need a NoSQL database or you want a relational database, then it will be a critical problem. So identify the category of the database is the first step for solving any problem. And once you identify the particular type of the database that you need, then only you go in detail that which database you want to choose. So for example, if you have seen in most of my videos, for example, you are creating a user service. At that time, if you have seen that, in most of the cases, I have used a Postgres solution to save all the user metadata. So is it not possible to save the user metadata in other database? Obviously it is possible. You can easily use a MongoDB or you can use a DynamoDB, something like that, to save all the metadata of the user. You can simply create a JSON object or a document object to keep all the information of the user, and you can simply save that information in a document database. So that is also fine. But if you have seen in most of the videos, I have used the MySQL or a Postgres database. And the main reason behind that, if you see that during your technical interview, whatever the problem that you are solving. So for example, this is like creating an online platform. So for example, whatever the system that you are defining or whatever the system you are designing, at that time you have only a handful amount of functional requirement and the non-functional requirement that you are solving. So here if you see, the first requirement that I have taken into consideration on the functional requirement is like user should be allowed to create account into our application. So this is nothing but a user onboarding process. So we are not doing any manipulation or we are not applying any analytics on this user database. So the reason why we are saving this data of the user is just because of the authentication and just to maintain the profiling. So just to maintain that only, why do you want to overcomplicate your system? So for example, if you are going with some analytical approach, like in the future you want to run some analytical data on top of the user database, at that time you can think of using some NoSQL database like MongoDB or something. But here the functional requirement is very straightforward. That is, you have to only fulfill the creation process or the login process of the user. Then why to overcomplicate the scenario just because you know that there exists a NoSQL database and there is a trend that is going on to implement a NoSQL solution rather than using a Postgres database. So always keep your design as much simple as possible so that you only fulfill the problem statement that you are given with during your technical interview. So if your interviewer only state that you have to create a process or you have to create a service that only fulfill the onboarding process of the user, do not overcomplicate the design by introducing a NoSQL database and all these things, because this problem statement can easily be solved using a Postgres or a MySQL database. I hope this is clear that why, based on the use case or based on the functional requirement that you are solving, your choice of database should also differ accordingly. So it is not that always choose a MySQL database or always choose a NoSQL database, but based on the scenario or based on the functional requirement you are solving, choose your database wisely. So in this video, I will be telling you that only, that based on the scenario, which database you should actually use. I hope that is clear. But before you step into the decision making of which database to use, there are a sequence of steps that you have to first follow before taking the decision. So let me first give you a decision tree by which you can decide that which type of database actually fits your requirement. I hope this is clear. So before choosing a particular database, there are four most important questions that you have to ask yourself. That is, what kind of data you are storing. Number two, do you have to maintain a transactional request? For example, you need the ACID property or not. So for example, you are doing a transaction related thing like order management or for example, transaction management. So all those things requires an ACID property. So whether your database also deal with that type of scenario or not. After that, the third question is what type of operations that you want to execute on top of the database. Means whether the database that you are creating, whether it is write heavy or it is read heavy, or whether you are running an analytical job, so on, whether you are doing a search operation on the database or not. So what are the type of operations that you are performing on the database? And the last question that you have to ask, that is, what is the scale of the system? So this scaling is nothing but a non-functional requirement. So if your interviewer is telling that you have to scale your application for supporting a billion of users, so based on that parameter also, the choice of the database also varies. So before choosing a particular database, make sure you ask yourself these four questions. And if you have the answer to all the questions, you will see that choosing a database will be very much easy. But remember one thing, whenever you are designing the system, do not jump into the conclusion of the choice of the database at the very initial stage. So if you see in all my videos, there you will see that whenever I was doing the high level designing, at that time I only specify that we need a storage unit or we need a persisting unit to store some data. At that time, I never mentioned that what is the database, what is the type of the database, or what should be the choice of the database in my high level designing. So in none of my videos over here, you will see that I have taken the decision that whether to use a MySQL database or a NoSQL database at the initial stage, means at the high level designing. Rather, what we do whenever we go in detail in the deep dive of the designing, at that time I first classify that what is the type of data that we are saving, what are the attributes that we are saving, and based on that, understanding the situation and based on the scale of the system, we choose the type of the database that is needed on that scenario. I hope this is clear that how in stepwise you should go with understanding what you are saving, what are the operation you are making, and then choose the database that suits your business requirement. Now, just to make your life simple, what I will do, I will give you some business scenario or business use case, and I will classify that based on a particular scenario, what type of database you should use and why you should use those type of database. I hope that makes sense because, for example, if you are developing a particular scenario or you are designing a particular application, at that time, if you see that a particular storage unit fulfills a business requirement, at that time you can simply go with the choice of the database that I am suggesting. So let me share with you a list of the database with the business requirement it actually solves. So here, if you look carefully, I have made a segregation of the database. So in case you are storing structured data which requires an asset property, or it is simply a data regarding the transaction of a system, then simply go with a Postgres solution or with a MySQL solution. And when you want to add a MySQL solution, for example, if you are creating an e-commerce application for storing the orders, for the banking application for storing the payments, for creating the hospital application for saving the orders or the booking. So on this type of scenario, use the MySQL solution where the data are actually flat and relational. But in case your data is a bit complex or you need to run some business scenario or you have to run some complex query on top of your database which needs some additional attribute or additional extension on your database, at that time go with a Postgres solution. So MySQL solution and Postgres, though both are relational database, but this Postgres database give you some added advantage of running some complex query on top of this database, and also all type of JSON related things. So for example, you are storing a user related information, and within this user related information there is a small piece of information that will be in the structure of the JSON. So if that is the type of the data you are saving, at that time go with a Postgres solution. I hope this is clear that whenever you are going with a structured database, simply go with a relational database, and in relational database you have two solutions, that is the MySQL and the Postgres solution. And if you need to run a complex query on top of your database, and if you need to save a blob item or something in a particular column of the database, at that time go with a Postgres solution. But there is another important question that can come while choosing the database. That is the last one, that is the scale of the database. So many of you guys have the idea that this MySQL database cannot scale properly. So that is not true, because the scaling of the MySQL solution is also possible, but at that time we have to set up the database in a meaningful way. Means we have to do the sharding, we have to do indexing. So all these databases are 100% scalable, but there are different approach to perform that. Now the question might arise that what is indexing, what is sharding, what is partitioning, which I was telling you to fulfill this scalability problem for the database. All these things we will be discussing in detail in our next video. But as of now, let's focus on the choice of the database based on the problem statement that you are facing. So let's go to our next one, that is when to choose a Mongo database. So for example, whenever you are creating an application like Instagram, product catalog, content management, user profiling, and all these things, at that time go with the Mongo database. In case you are saving the information in the form of the blob. So here if you look carefully, I have told that you can save the user profiling in the MongoDB, but I have also told you that this user profiling can also be done in the Postgres solution. So it depends on what are the data you are saving. So it is not that just seeing the use case, you just select a particular database. Go with the scenario that what are the data you are saving, and based on that only you take the call that what type of database you want to select. I hope this is clear. So do not take this entire suggestion blindly. Question yourself that whether it actually fulfills the requirement or not, and in case it fulfills your requirement, then only you select the particular database that I have given as an option. I hope this is clear. Now the next one is the Redis, means whenever you need a caching thing or whenever you need a data in the least possible time, means where the latency should be as nominal as possible, but the data that you need should not be persistent. It is the temporary data that you need for calculating or performing an operation. At that time, use this Redis cluster or the Redis database. Similarly, whenever you are creating a social media thing where you have to maintain a tree or the hierarchical data, at that time go with the Neo4j to save all the information in the hierarchical manner. So here if you see, I have just listed some of the important databases that are mostly used in the industry or we mostly follows for solving any system designing problem. But if you want to go in more detail that what should be the choice of the database based on the particular scenario, for that, what you can do, you can simply go with this documentation that I have posted in my website. So here if you see in this documentation, I have told everything in detail. Means what are the different type of the data, means structured data, semi-structured, unstructured. Then what is the difference between SQL and the NoSQL database? And on top of that, here I have given some added information that will be very much helpful for you for choosing any type of database during your system designing. So for example, whenever you need a SQL database and this is the type of the data you want to save, then you can simply go with this Postgres database, MySQL database, Maria database, SQL Server, Oracle database, SQLite. So these are the different type of SQL database that are available in the market. So during your system designing interview, if you can identify that what type of data you want to save and if you can convince your interviewer that the type of database you want to use is a SQL database, that is more than enough. And it will be an added advantage if you can name few of the database that lies on that category. So here I have also given for each and every category what are the most commonly used enterprise model that are available on a particular choice of the database. So here you can see for the document store, this is the sample of the data by which you can identify that this is the document that I need to save, and based on that, what are the popular database, that is the MongoDB, Couchbase, CouchDB, Firestore and Amazon Document DB. So this comes under the category of the document store. Now coming to our next thing, that is the key value store, means whenever there is a use case where you need to save a key value pair, means like a hash map, at that time the choice of the database should be a key value store, and the most popularly used key value store are nothing but the Redis, DynamoDB and Memcache. And also if you look carefully, I have also given some added notes that what are the scenario it actually covers and which of the scenario you should avoid using this type of database. Similarly, we have the white store database, graph database, search engine database, time series database, vector database, and all of this. So take your time, go through all the scenarios, and based on that, first identify the scenario, what type of data you are saving, what are the problem statement you want to solve, and thereafter only choose the database that suits your requirement. I hope this is clear. Now here if you see, I have given you one more example file where you can just simply choose the correct database based on the problem that you are solving. So whenever you are solving a problem on banking, payment or order, go with a relational database. Similarly, if you are going with a text search thing, then go with an elastic database or an elastic search. Then if you are going with a social media, go with a Neo4j. So based on the category of the problem that you are solving, I have mentioned the database which is perfect for that use case. So there are a lot of information I have shared over here, and I will be uploading this file or uploading this web page very soon in my website. Now if you look carefully, there is one more added advantage or one more content that I have shared which most of you guys ask, that is how we should distinguish the choice between the MySQL database and the Postgres database. So for example, you understood that you need a relational database, but if your interviewer ask you this question that why you want to use a Postgres database, not a MySQL database, at that time to face those type of question also I've given you a thorough documentation. So here you can see within a particular type of database I have done a classification. So here you can see this is the difference between the MySQL and the Postgres database, means based on a particular scenario when you should use a MySQL database or when you should use a Postgres solution. Similarly, here for each and every category of the database, I have compared each and every database with other so that it will be easy for you to identify a database during your technical interview. I hope this is clear and this resource will be enough to choose any database during your system designing interview. But still there is a problem. That is, for some of the scenario, you have used a Postgres database. And for example, at the very starting phase of your application, you are saving the information of 50,000 users. But in the future, if you want to scale the application to 50 million, how you should actually do? Do you need to change the database from a Postgres to a NoSQL database? Or what should be the approach to solve those type of scalability problems? So all these things we will be discussing in detail in our next video, and we will see that how we can do our indexing on a type of the database, how we can share the database, how we can do partitioning on the database, how we can make sure that the data the client is requesting for the multiple number of times can be cached in our database. So all these things we will be seeing in detail in our next video, where we will see how we should enhance a particular database to solve the non-functional requirement, that is scalability. So see you in our next video. But before that, if you have found this video useful, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update from my channel and you are always ready for your next interview. So see you in our next video. Thank you.